Hello there. Now, before we get on to this week's very interesting video, had one or two interesting emails, a couple of them from chainsaw Nazis, forget about them. Interesting one here. You seem to have a lot of interesting woods. Where do you get your wood from? Well, that's a good question. I'm lucky enough to live in very rural Somerset, where there is an abundance of wood. So getting to know your local tree surgeons, your arborists, sawmills is very important. But also, since the village I live in is a conservation area, before you can do anything to your trees, pretty much you've got to get planning permission. So if you keep your eye open on the planning portal, you can see who intends to trim, cut down and dispose of whatever, and you're forewarned in advance. Another place to get interesting wood from is in fact churchyards. Churchyards, of course, are famous for their yew for one reason or another, and many other very nice native species. Now, if you're going to get any timber from a churchyard, I recommend you keep an eye on the church notice board to find out when the services are, and the best time to get it is in fact during the service, because all that singing in the organ, they can't hear the chainsaw over the top of that. And lastly, not least, another silly email here. Instead of your stupid jokes and your brother popping up from time to time, why can't you have scantily clad girls dancing in the background? Well, that would be nice, but not so thing. Who was that from? That was from Deirdre. Oi, 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 what are you doing now? I was just helping you out, filling you in here. Okay, come on. Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. All right, I'm going. I'm sorry about that. Don't know what to do with him at times. So, the emails have been dealt with. What's this week's video about? Okay, this week I'm going to try something a bit different. I'm going to try freeze drying some part-turn projects. Okay, so what is freeze drying? We've all seen freeze dried food, the dried fruit we get with our breakfast cereals, astronaut food if you like, and also freeze dried coffee are two good examples. Now, how do we do this freeze drying process? Okay, so water has three natural states. It's frozen as a solid, it's a liquid as water as we see it every day, and it's a gas once it's boiled, if you like. So the sublimation process involves turning the frozen water to a gas and therefore missing the liquid stage. This is achieved by letting the frozen object thaw out in a vacuum, which permits the water to boil off as it evaporates from the object or whatever you're trying to dry. Now therefore, in theory, and I say theory because I haven't tried this, this is a real-time experiment, if you have a vacuum pump and a vacuum gauge which you're using for wood stabilisation or resin pieces, theoretically you should be able to do this yourself. Now potentially one of the problems I can forecast with this is the checking occurring or splitting occurring in the wood during the rapid change from solid water to a gas. So I believe that this technique is only likely to work on smaller pieces of wood. And when I say smaller, I really mean thinner, to avoid this from happening. So what I'm going to do today is in fact a real-time test. I'm going to turn a couple of pieces of green wood, and I know they're going to be green, and you know they're going to be green because I'm actually going to a neighbour's house to watch a cherry tree being reduced, and I'm going to take a couple of pieces of that cherry, put them on the lathe immediately, turn one down to a spindle, turn the other one down to something simple like a pen holder, which can be universally or have a universal thickness, and then freeze dry them both weighing them before and after the process, and obviously using the moisture gauge to see what kind of reduction in moisture we get. So that's the theory of it. Freeze drying wood to save time, being able to turn wood and maybe turn it around in 24 hours instead of part turning it, leaving it for a few months and then coming back to it. So off to my neighbour's house with the camera and my saw, and hopefully I'll get a couple of bits of trimmings from his cherry tree. So here I am in my friends Nadia and Steve's garden with the tree surgeon here today to reduce one of their cherry trees. Now, as part of the reduction, they are reducing the height of the tree by 5 or 6 metres, but it's become apparent very quickly that I'm not going to get any wood from this, which is going to be of a useful diameter. So a plan B is to use a couple of pieces of holly, which is very green, showing here at 32%, which is in fact from the same garden. So then, just need to get these two logs roughed out with the spindle gouge to get them to their usable diameter. I've just noticed a couple of cracks in the base of this piece. I don't know how deep into the piece they'll go, so I'll take a precaution and fill them with some CA glue early. Okay, so I've let the two pieces of holly freeze overnight, and early this morning I have set up my vacuum pump and the vacuum chamber in my sun lounge. Now, my research has suggested that you need to in fact heat the vacuum chamber while the freeze drying process is taking place, so I'm misappropriating my hostess hot plate for this purpose. Before I start the process, I done a complete test on the vacuum pump and the chamber to make sure all was in good working order. Okay, need to retrieve the two pieces of wood from the freezer. The vignette is still there. Anyway, not to get distracted, put the two items into the chamber and start the evacuation process. Now, the system I opted to employ for this exercise was to leave the vacuum pump valve open all the time. The reason I did this was to allow the water vapour to be vented back through the vacuum pump. Now, after 1 hour and 20 minutes of this constant cycling, I decided that the two pieces of wood must have been completely thawed out by now, and decided to end the process. Now, despite the length of time these two pieces had been in the heated chamber pot, they both felt quite cold. Also, I noticed immediately that there was additional cracks in both pieces. So next thing to do then is to weigh them and to find out what the loss is, if any. The larger of the two pieces is reading at 452 grams, which was originally 469 grams, so that's only a 17 gram loss. And coincidentally also a 17 gram loss for the smaller piece. Now, the moisture meters given fairly consistent readings of about 15% across all surfaces of both pieces. Now, this reading of 15% isn't consistent with the weight loss of the wood, and I put this down to the fact that I believe that the moisture was given up from the near surface. Okay then, freeze drying wood, very limited success. Moisture content not reduced by that much, I don't think, and also some additional cracks appearing in the wood during the process. Freeze drying partially turned pieces is not something I'm likely to repeat, simply because I've had better results from a microwave, and a microwave is less faffle for sure than messing around with the vacuum pump and the chamber. Having said that, I'm no expert with vacuum chambers and vacuum pumps or freeze drying, and if anyone does improve on this technique, then I'll be happy to hear from you. Anyway, I'm going to leave these for a couple of days while I get another project out of the way, and then I will finish them off. Whether or not I texture them, colour them, or just finish them as they are, depends on whether any more cracks appear in the next couple of days. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.